Even when I met Jay-Z and I signed to Roc Nation, the first thing he told me to do is get plastic surgery. And I didn't. Because it's okay. Guess what? I'm 50. I was the first and I was the new. And I was like making something interesting happen that wasn't fucking happening before. People make it, they all can turn around and thank Beyonce because that's it. And enough is enough. I'm everyone now. And even Adele, because she's retired now, but her career would not exist if I hadn't made Jonathan Dickens into a manager. And when she gets an award, she thanks Beyonce. And no, I didn't want to drip myself in blood and cover myself and swim in goop, in black goop, and fucking like wear devil horns to fucking sell a record. Fuck that.
You will be blackballed. You will be talked about. You will be shitted on. You will be rumored about. But you have to stand strong on what you don't care for.
Mia, the R&B princess who once lit up the charts with hits like Case of the X and My Love Is Like Whoa, is finally breaking her silence. And what she's revealing? It's nothing short of explosive. For years, fans wondered why Mia, with her undeniable talent, stunning looks, and Grammy-winning chops, suddenly faded from the spotlight right as her star was rising. The rumors swirled, the whispers never stopped. But now, Mia is speaking her truth, and she's pointing the finger squarely at two of music's most powerful figures, Beyonce and Jay-Z.
There were people that tried to shut it down a lot. I think I had a lot of that going on. So I do think that in the industry, so when I think back on it, I think there are good people in it as well. There are bad people and then there's good people. Obviously the bad ones are in power, but that's with anything, you know, and then they would censor and push you down and keep all the good ones down, you know, while the bad ones rise to the top and become more powerful. And that I think is in every industry.
According to Mia, Queen Bey wasn't just a rival in music. She was a behind-the-scenes puppeteer pulling strings, allegedly driven by jealousy and insecurity. The target? Mia's career, the means, Jay-Z himself. Mia claims that Beyonce used her influence over Jay-Z to quietly shut down opportunities, freeze collaborations, and eventually blacklist her from major industry circles. This wasn't just a lover's spat. It was a career takedown orchestrated at the highest levels of the music game. Sound unbelievable? That's exactly how they wanted it. In a candid and emotional reveal, Mia is peeling back the polished surface of the music industry to show what happens when egos, power, and envy collide. She's naming names, connecting dots, and exposing the silent sabotage that she says cost her everything she'd worked for.
They always knew I was a bit of a renegade and I was always out. I was the outsider, you know. And
Is it because you didn't need them?
Yeah,
like
100%.
There's an element, and
100%.
I got it. So versus,
so I was more like a trailblazer even for them. Like Jimmy would have me in the office and, you know, fire loads of people and hire loads of people and have me at the table while he did it, saying she's the future of music, you know.
So if you thought you knew the story of early 2000s R&B, think again. This is about more than just missed tours or canceled features. This is about the cost of success in a world where even your friends can turn into your biggest enemies. At first, it all looked like friendly competition. Mia and Beyonce were two powerful voices climbing the same R&B mountain, but make no mistake, they were climbing fast. Mia burst onto the scene in 1998 with her self-titled debut album, Maya, flaunting smooth vocals and undeniable star quality. Tracks like It's All About Me and Moving On were more than just hits, they were declarations. The industry took notice. She wasn't here to play cute in the background, she was here to dominate. By the time her second album, Fear of Flying, dropped in 2000, Mia had officially arrived. Case of the X smashed through the charts and became a cultural moment. Every girl group, every summer block party, every radio countdown, it was her name on repeat. She followed up with Mood Ring in 2003, solidifying her status with a more mature sound and style that proved she wasn't just a pretty face, she was evolving.
Money like the way that other artists made money, you know, and also I didn't aspire to do that. So I didn't need to please anyone and go along with anything, and you know what I mean? I think I was very protected by that. But on the other hand, what I want to say is, reflecting back on it, in the beginning, I felt like, musically, I was an imposter, and that was the message of, when you're really just coming from nowhere. And in my community, like I'm a Sri Lankan Tamil, there'd never been musicians, and we were right in the thick of a civil war. And aspiring to be a musician was just completely outside of the community, so I didn't also have anyone to call and be like, hey, how was it for you? It was like a very brand new thing. It was brand new for the East and it was brand new for the West. And so people just left me alone.
Now take a look at the same timeline, and you'll see Beyonce wasn't far behind. She'd already found mainstream fame with Destiny's Child in the late 90s. But in 2003, she was ready to go solo. That's when she released Dangerously in Love, powered by the explosive energy of Crazy in Love and Baby Boy. It was a massive leap, and she knew exactly what was at stake. Because right around then, Mia was still in the picture, still climbing, still capable of becoming that girl. And that's where things, according to Mia, took a dark turn. Behind the glittering lights and red carpets, Beyonce wasn't just watching the charts, she was watching Mia. Word is, she started seeing her not as a peer, but as a threat. And if the rumors hold weight, she wasn't about to share the crown. Mia says Beyonce was jealous, afraid she'd be left behind in a world where Mia's sultry sound and streetwise elegance might outshine her polished image. That fear, Mia claims, turned into strategy. And the key player? Jay-Z. Even in the early 2000s, Jay-Z wasn't just a rapper, he was a kingmaker. With his Rockefeller influence, industry connections, and deep clout in both hip-hop and corporate music boardrooms, Jay had the power to make or break careers. And he would, as Mia suggests, do anything for the woman he loved. So when Beyonce started raising concerns behind the scenes, Jay-Z allegedly moved in silence. Calls stopped coming, features dried up. Suddenly, Mia's name wasn't getting the green light anymore. People in the industry stopped talking. Opportunities vanished without explanation. One moment, she was on every video countdown. The next, she was barely on the radar. Coincidence? Mia doesn't think so.
Not knowing who you are and your limitations, There can be power plays and ultimatums given for the people that hold the power, whether that be toward a female or male artist. I often find that a lot of women that I speak to suffer from that, but you really have to protect, what you allow yourself to believe, because it will be fed, whether it be your body image, what you need to change about yourself, how you need to sound, what you need to look like, how you need to dress, who you need to date, what you need to say. You grow into that. If you start early in any game without knowing who you are and being solid in some type of foundation, it's very dangerous for you as an individual.
She believes it was a calculated takedown, masked as business decisions, but rooted in envy. A career slowly dismantled so Beyonce could stand alone in the spotlight, free of rivals, with her man at her side pulling the strings. It's the kind of story no one wants to believe. But in the ruthless world of fame, silence can be louder than screams. And now that Mia is speaking up, it's not just a story, it's a reckoning. But even after all that, she decided to not completely leave. But Mia's story doesn't stop in the early 2000s. A decade after her chart-topping success, she tried to mount a full-scale comeback. She was older, wiser, and more in control of her artistry than ever before. And with her fourth studio album, Matangi, ready to shake the music world, she made a move that seemed, at the time, to be a major win. She signed with Roc Nation management in May 2012. At first glance, it looked like a power alignment. Jay-Z's management company was quickly becoming the go-to label for edgy, genre-blending artists who needed the industry muscle to cut through the noise. With Roc Nation behind her, Mia had every reason to believe her new era would come with the resources, visibility, and backing she'd been previously denied. Matangi was bold, spiritual, rebellious, and refreshingly outside the box. It was the kind of project that could redefine her legacy. But behind the curtain, something wasn't right. As the album neared completion, delays began to pile up. The project was pushed back again and again. Mia later revealed one of the strangest reasons she'd ever been given for an album delay. At the moment, I've been told it's too positive, so we're having a bit of an issue at the label. Too positive? For a label known for managing managing some of the most dynamic and provocative names in music, that explanation made little sense. But in hindsight, Mia believes that was just the cover story, a sanitized excuse to keep the truth buried. The real issue, she suggests, wasn't the content of the music, it was the content of her truth, and Roc Nation didn't want her telling it. Adding to the tension was a documentary Mia had been working on. It wasn't just some promotional fluff, it was a raw, unfiltered look at her creative process, her struggles with the label, and the industry politics that continued to haunt her. The trailer was ready to drop, fans were excited, but just days before it was set to premiere, Roc Nation pulled it. No warning, no explanation, just gone. And just like that, Mia was reminded that she wasn't in control, not fully, not under Jay-Z's roof. In December 2013, shortly after the release of Matangi, Mia had had enough. She took to X, then Twitter, issuing a simple yet loaded goodbye. "I'm leaving Roc Nation. Thanks to everyone who supported the Maya hashtag #MatangiLP. Happy New Year."
You have to not be desperate. You have to be willing to say, "I'm good," and walk away, you know? But if contractually you have no options, that's a living hell, you know? I find it horrific to have to be buying to negative energies. It's unfair, whether you're a male or female. But I would definitely have to say those in power, you know, that want to abuse it and get off on abusing it, definitely plot on their prey, you know. And you have to be willing to sacrifice anything that you think you might benefit from, a career, etc., and say no. Period.
Behind that polite message was deep frustration, betrayal, and fear. Fear that once again, the same forces that derailed her early career were working overtime to quiet her voice. Fear that Beyonce and Jay-Z, whose polished public image had become nearly bulletproof, were using their influence to manage not just her music, but her message. The music industry has long been a place where powerful couples consolidate their control behind the scenes, but Mia's experience at Roc Nation felt eerily familiar. This wasn't just about bad management. This was about intentional suppression. According to Mia, Beyonce was still watching, still threatened. Even in 2013, with global superstardom locked in, Beyonce allegedly wasn't comfortable with Mia reclaiming her space. Because if Mia was allowed to speak freely through her music, her documentary, her truth, she could disrupt the clean, curated image Beyonce and Jay had spent years crafting. And Jay-Z, he still had the reach, the loyalty, and the strategic coldness to make that disruption go away quietly. From denying collaborations, installing albums, to blocking documentary releases, the signs were all there. It was a quiet war, and Mia had been outnumbered. But now, she's refusing to be erased. After years of silence, she's reclaiming her narrative and reminding the world that her voice never disappeared. It was pushed out, and the deeper you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. Mia wasn't just a casualty of bad luck or label politics. She was shut down for the same reason so many truth tellers in the industry are, because her story was inconvenient for the powerful, and because, once again, Beyonce couldn't stand the competition. If Mia thought aligning with Roc Nation would be her ticket to creative freedom and industry support, she was sorely mistaken. Instead of being embraced as a visionary artist, ready for her second wind, she found herself boxed in again. The tone of her album Matangi didn't sit right with the gatekeepers. It wasn't angry, edgy, or rebellious enough for the brand they had quietly crafted for her. Behind the scenes, she was told things like, "You need to darken it up a bit. We built you up as this controversial, rebellious figure, public enemy #1, and now you're coming out with all this light and positivity." It was clear the label wasn't interested in her growth. They didn't want evolution. They wanted consistency. They wanted controversy. And when Mia didn't deliver it on cue, they started pulling strings. The irony? Controversy was something they'd once leaned into, especially when it benefited them. Let's not forget what happened just a year before she joined Roc Nation. In 2012, Mia made headlines during the Super Bowl halftime show, not for her performance, but for a blink and you miss it moment when she flipped the middle finger on live television. What followed was a storm of corporate outrage. The NFL launched a full-blown legal attack, accusing her of defiling the sanctity of the Super Bowl, a supposedly family-friendly event. They didn't just demand an apology, they filed a massive lawsuit, originally for $1.5 million, later inflating it to a staggering $16.6 million, citing the public exposure she gained from the gesture as damages. Yes, Yes, you read that right. They tried to put a dollar value on a middle finger. Mia didn't back down. In her own words, the lawsuit was completely ridiculous. She called out the hypocrisy with razor-sharp clarity, how they wanted to make an example out of her, how they were scapegoating her to redefine what offensive meant in America.
What you're looking at basically has my middle finger in the foreground, and if you find the larger picture where it zooms out, there is a row background scenery of 10, 15 cheerleaders, young black females that Madonna got from a local high school in Indianapolis, and they're all under 16. And if you look at them, they're wearing cheerleader outfits, hips twisted in the air, legs wide open, and in this very sexual, provocative position. So now they're scapegoated me into figuring out the goalposts on what is offensive in America. Like, is my finger offensive, or is an underage black girl with her legs wide open more offensive to the family audience?
It's a massive waste of time, a massive waste of money, and a massive display of powerful corporations' absurdity, she said at the time. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was exposing the double standards that ran through the industry. After all, as she pointed out, there were young cheerleaders in barely their outfits, grinding on the same stage. But somehow she was the one being dragged through the mud for a split-second hand gesture. But this was the kind of controversy Roc Nation wanted to manage, not support. They didn't want a Mia who fought back, who told the truth, who challenged the hypocrisy of billion-dollar brands. They wanted silence, obedience, and marketability. And when Mia refused to play the part, she was quietly pushed aside again. The message was loud and clear. Speak out and you'll be punished. Step out of line and you'll be left out in the cold. And Beyonce, still at the center of it all, still untouchable. With Jay-Z orchestrating everything from behind the curtain, it wasn't hard for them to distance themselves from Mia when her story no longer fit the image they were selling. Whether it was flipping off a crowd or releasing music that was too positive, Mia was once again too real for the machine. And the machine, as always, closed ranks to protect its golden couple. Just when you think the story couldn't get more disturbing, it does. Because when Mia tried to reclaim her narrative and step back into the spotlight, not only did she have to deal with silencing, sabotage, and censorship, but also being scapegoated in one of the most high-profile controversies of her career. We all remember the 2012 Super Bowl halftime show, where Mia made a split-second gesture, flashing the middle finger during a performance. It was a move that rocked headlines and sparked backlash, but what came next wasn't just media frenzy, it was corporate persecution. The NFL came down on her with full force, suing her in what would become one of the most absurd and aggressive lawsuits in Super Bowl history. They accused her of violating the brand's wholesome image, claiming her gesture damaged the integrity of the league, and using it as grounds to sue her for $16.6 million in damages. That's right, $16.6 million for a single finger. But Mia wasn't having it. She pushed back hard, calling the lawsuit ridiculous, and pointed out the painful, glaring hypocrisy. In a later interview, she exposed what the NFL and Roc Nation tried to keep buried. She said if you zoom out, you'll see a row of about 10, 15 cheerleaders, young black girls under 16. Madonna had them brought in from a local Indianapolis high school. They're in cheerleader outfits, hips twisted in the air, legs wide open, in these highly sexualized positions. And I'm the one who's offensive. That was the moment Mia peeled back the curtain on how America picks and chooses its outrage. So now they're scapegoating me into figuring out the goalposts on what's offensive in America, she said. Is it my finger, or is it underage black girls with their legs wide open being broadcast to a so-called family audience? But here's where things took an even darker turn. Jay-Z, her own manager at the time, wasn't fighting for her. He wasn't protecting her, guiding her, or using his influence to help her navigate the storm. He was part of the pressure. In 2018, years after the scandal, Mia opened up to Huck magazine, exposing how Jay-Z tried to coerce her into signing a financially devastating deal just to end the lawsuit quickly. According to her, the deal was downright predatory. She said he lawsuit was so ridiculous, it proposed that they would keep 100% of her earnings for the rest of her life if she ever earned more than $2 million. She said Jay-Z was like, "You should sign that ish," and she straight up said no. Let that sink in. 100% of her future earnings, indefinitely, just to appease a corporate giant and make the problem disappear. Instead of backing her, Jay-Z pushed her toward financial ruin, and when she did the interview exposing the story, she knew the consequences were coming. She even warned fans to read it quickly before it was deleted, because she knew exactly how powerful Jay-Z was and how quickly information could be scrubbed. And like clockwork, the Huck article was soon taken offline, with the link leading to a suspension notice. Just like she predicted, Mia wasn't just a nuisance to the system, she was a threat. She wasn't afraid to tell the truth, to expose the double standards, to resist silence. And that's why, time and time again, the machine came after her. And let's not forget, Mia didn't just call out corporate injustice, she also called out Beyonce directly. In a separate interview, she challenged the narrow focus of mainstream activism in the US, criticizing celebrities who, in her words, cherry-pick causes that were palatable and profitable. It's interesting that in America, the only issue you're allowed to talk about is BLM, Mia said. That's not new to me. I've been fighting for all kinds of people, including Syrians, but you don't see Beyonce or others talking about that. That kind of candor made her dangerous, not because she was wrong, but because she couldn't be controlled. In the end, Mia wasn't just an artist silenced by circumstance. She was a woman systematically shut down by the very people who claim to champion freedom and expression. Her story reveals what happens when you don't fit the narrative, when you question the icons, when you refuse to bow down. And it proves, more than ever, that Beyonce and Jay-Z didn't just protect their image. They built it on the broken voices of those they left behind. While the music industry turned its back on her, Mia's personal life descended into even deeper turmoil, reaching far beyond charts and contracts. What unfolded in private was far more devastating than the public ever knew. Her career wasn't just silenced, her very role as a mother came under attack. And once again, she believes Jay-Z was involved, pulling strings behind the scenes to control not just her art, but her ability to parent. At the start of 2024, Mia returned to social media, but this time, she wasn't promoting a single or teasing new music. She was crying out for help. She revealed that she had been struggling for months, possibly longer, with gaining access to her own child, who was living in the United States. She said she had been waiting endlessly for approval to re-enter the country, caught in a tangled visa process that had already passed its legal time frame. Her tone was desperate and angry, not just at the system, but at the deliberate obstacles she believed were being placed in her way. According to her, this wasn't just red tape, it was punishment. She suggested that her visa issues were rooted not in any recent legal trouble, but in a petty charge from her teenage years, when she had been poor and stole food to survive. That old mistake, she claimed, was suddenly being weaponized against her now, decades later, as a reason to block her from visiting her child. It was another layer in a long history of people in power finding ways to keep her voiceless and contained. But the circumstances were far more complex than a denied travel document. Mia went further, pointing to her political activism as a possible reason for the targeted treatment. She has long been vocal about global injustices, particularly the violence in the Middle East, and had recently spoken up about ceasefires and the protection of civilians in war-torn regions. These views, she believed, crossed an invisible line. She suspected that by speaking out, especially during a time when celebrity silence was the norm, she had been labeled a problem once again. And this time, her punishment wasn't just professional, it was maternal. For Mia, the most painful irony was clear. She had been allowed into the US many times before, even while she was openly criticizing global powers. But now, after calling attention to ongoing human rights violations, her ability to even enter the country was revoked. She felt forced to choose between her child and her conscience, between staying quiet to see her son or speaking the truth and losing him. No mother should ever be cornered into that kind of decision, but it only got darker. She revealed that the child's father, backed by individuals she described as dangerous and influential, was keeping her son in a household she believed to be unsafe. She didn't speak in vague terms. She pointed directly to the Bronfman family, some of whom had been publicly linked to the NXIVM cult, a group exposed for trafficking, coercion, and manipulation. In her words, the US government seemed more comfortable with her child being in that environment than with him being with his own mother, an outspoken artist who had merely dared to tell the truth. What's more disturbing is that Mia claimed her initial custody battle began during the exact period she was managed by Roc Nation. In her view, that was no coincidence. She alleged that Jay-Z was paid by the Bronfmans themselves to obstruct her, professionally and legally. If true, it would mean that while she was trusting Roc Nation to help guide her career, they were actually working in lockstep with people trying to cut her out of her child's life. It was around this time, she claimed, that the release of her 2013 album Matangi was quietly buried, not just because of label politics, but because she was unwilling to play along with the narrative being crafted around her. She said that her style, her image, and her sound were stripped from her and repackaged to benefit artists who were more compliant. She alleged she was blacklisted, shadow banned online, and strategically silenced. Her online presence faded, her name was scrubbed from trending charts and playlists, and her voice, both literal and metaphorical, was smothered. Still, she says she made peace with that sacrifice. In her eyes, protecting her son from being caught in the madness of elite manipulation was worth everything she lost. But it didn't end there. According to Mia, Roc Nation severed all contact with her the moment her legal battle became public. She said her emails disappeared, wiped clean, as if her communication with Jay-Z had never existed. Her team went silent, and then, in what she described as a terrifying escalation, her home was broken into, her laptop stolen, and she was legally restricted from leaving Brooklyn, bound by an order she said lasted 15 years. She felt trapped, powerless, and alone. She also accused Aurora James, a prominent designer closely connected to Beyonce and Solange, of taking actions that violated her parental rights. She claimed her son was vaccinated without her knowledge or consent under Aurora's watch, a move that she saw as a blatant overstep, and further evidence that powerful people in her circle were acting against her, not for her. In all, what Mia revealed in 2024 wasn't just another celebrity breakdown or social media meltdown. It was the culmination of over a decade of alleged manipulation, suppression, betrayal, and personal destruction. From being pushed out of music to being blocked from her child, she painted a picture of a system designed not just to silence, but to erase. And at the core of it all, she says it was the same name every time: Jay-Z, the man who once held her career in his hands, only to twist that power into something she claims nearly destroyed her completely. For Mia, the cost of truth was everything, but she's still standing, still speaking, and finally being heard. Continuing her string of explosive revelations, Mia didn't hold back when discussing the toxic dynamics she faced under Roc Nation, and more specifically, with Jay-Z himself. She claimed that shortly after signing with the label, Jay-Z urged her to undergo plastic surgery, suggesting she wasn't pretty enough to succeed in the industry. This demand shocked many, especially since Mia is widely recognized for her natural beauty and ageless looks. The idea that she needed to change her appearance felt not just insulting, but entirely unnecessary. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Mia went further, accusing Jay-Z of being deeply involved in occult practices and Satanism, a dark side of the industry that many insiders rarely speak about publicly. She revealed that she was pressured to participate in blood rituals and other sinister ceremonies in order to boost her career and record sales. Standing her ground, she refused to partake in any such dealings, openly rejecting the idea of selling her soul to gain success. For Mia, maintaining her integrity meant refusing to sacrifice her beliefs or dignity, even if it cost her everything. Her claims didn't come out of nowhere. Over the years, whispers and stories have circulated about the Carters' involvement in occult symbolism and secret societies. One notable voice is Larry Johnson, a former associate of Jay-Z who broke ranks to expose the darker side of the mogul. Johnson described how, beneath the surface of lavish parties and glamour, there was a disturbing allegiance to forces far removed from traditional spirituality. He suggested that Jay-Z and Beyonce were deeply entrenched in rituals and belief systems that starkly contrasted with those held by Maya, and that this fundamental difference made them adversaries. Mia also contrasted her own journey with the lifestyle the Carters promoted. She shared how she had changed significantly since her early days, moving away from materialism and promiscuity toward a more grounded, spiritual existence. She credited this transformation with opening her eyes to the truth about who Jay-Z really aligned himself with, painting him as someone serving a darker power rather than a higher divine force. The public's reaction to Mia's revelations has been mixed but largely skeptical, with many dismissing her as paranoid or unstable. Some have gone as far as labeling her a conspiracy theorist, using that label to undermine her credibility and silence her voice. Unfortunately, this kind of character assassination is a common tactic used against artists who challenge powerful industry figures. After her fallout with the Carters, Mia found herself blackballed, branded as difficult, and increasingly isolated from the mainstream music scene.
What happened to your record?
And they pulled my record.
When was this?
Cancelled.
That was 4 years ago?
No, this was October 2022.
So wait.
Wow.
Who was they though?
I'm walking out.
Nice.
Walking out.
Nice.
Who are they?
No, you said
Who are they?
the record label.
The record label, yes.
They canceled your album.
Yes.
But
Is this Jay-Z? Can we get into that?
I was on Island.
Okay.
Yeah. I was on Island.
wow, that's wild. Has the music come out or what's going on with it?
That was it. It got cancelled. And I got dropped off all the magazine covers, you know, like GQ dropped my cover. I think people from Vogue and stuff like that. There was loads of press lined up and everybody cancelled it.
Critics argue that Mia's own choices contributed to her downfall, claiming she sabotaged her career with controversial statements and erratic behavior. But those who look deeper see a pattern that's all too familiar. A woman who refused to conform, who pushed back against a system built to control, and who was consequently punished, professionally, personally, and publicly. Mia really feels like the whole drama that went down with her career happened because she was on the verge of blowing up, like actually becoming something big. And honestly, she thinks Jay-Z and Beyonce just couldn't handle that. She wasn't just another artist, she was a real threat, someone who could have shaken up their carefully controlled world. Now, a lot of people point fingers at Jay-Z as the guy doing all the dirty work behind the scenes. But Mia, she's convinced that Beyonce was actually the one calling the shots, pulling all the strings from the top. Queen Bee didn't want anyone else stealing the spotlight, especially not Mia. It was more than just business, it felt personal. Mia says Beyonce's jealousy and ambition basically pushed Jay-Z into making moves to shut her down before she could really take off. They saw her as competition, someone who might outshine them, and that just wasn't something they were willing to allow. So yeah, that's why Mia thinks her career got blocked, why doors suddenly closed when things were looking up. It wasn't about talent or hard work, it was about protecting the throne, and unfortunately for Mia, she got caught right in the middle of it all. So what do you think? Comment down below and let us know. If you like this video, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be the first to see my next video. I post updates like this every week where I uncover the secrets of your favorite celebrities.